What was that like for you? Like initially, like, being a single mom and having to like adapt now to this, like you're saying, like you're just figuring out, being a working mom, business owner, and then, you get this thrown into your life where it's like, okay, now I have this whole new obstacle to kind of overcome. So how did you kind of overcome it? Or you might still be kind of like, figuring it out too. And, what are some kind of tips you have for moms out there listening that are either maybe about to be or kind of in that stage where they're kind of doing things on their own?
It definitely was a transition to move from we had so many things going on in that first year. So when my daughter, I want to say she was like 7 months old, that's kind of like when I had this bomb dropped on me by my ex. And so we tried, we did our best. We tried to work it out, and I just, I couldn't do it, but his dad was really sick. So we ended up moving in with his dad. And so I'm like, I don't know. I don't feel like I can do this or, like make this shift right now on my own. So I kind of like stuck it out. So that was like, we moved from being on our own, then moving in with his dad. And then I'm like, I can't do this anymore. So that's when I made the decision to leave. I ended up moving in with my mom. So it was like a lot of different transitions in that first year, especially too with my daughter. Kids, they are adaptable, but they definitely can sense that, that stress. The one thing that I would say made it so much easier is realizing how loved my daughter was and seeing that, okay, she, when she's with her dad, she's in really great company. Everybody there really loves her. And then also, living with my mom for a while, knowing that my mom had, my back and loved her and supported her while I was trying to, navigate all of this. And from an advice standpoint, just surrounding yourself with people who really genuinely love you, want what's best for you, and understand your, and have empathy for you and your position. Because truth be told, I think there's a lot of people who would tell you, don't do this, don't do that. Like I had people say, don't leave him. Like you should try to work it out. You have to trust yourself at the end of the day and find those people who will support you. And setting boundaries was like game changing for me because I never grew up with that. I never knew what that even really meant. So trying to navigate what boundaries were and how to establish them, how to be firm, especially with an ex, like, and so it is messy, but I would say like those were like my biggest strengths in those moments were like, the setting boundaries and then just making sure I found people and surrounded my people, like myself, with people who loved and supported me and my daughter. Because, when you're going through a hard time, it's so easy to kind of just get lost in what's going on and get, put yourself in this overthinking anxiety or depressive mode. And by staying surrounded and connected to people who care and want to make sure you're okay and, can help you also forget that you're going through these hard things, it definitely makes a huge difference on, your mindset. And I think a lot of my support system knew to where I lack. And it's like, I one of my probably weaknesses is that I overexert myself, I overpromise, and it's hard for me to make, to carry that around with me as I'm like trying to do all of the things, and then make that move too. So it definitely helped to have those two.
And I love that you bring up boundaries because that's something too, like I didn't necessarily grow up with. And then like when you discover it, it's the most amazing thing because you realize like people's energy and like how they act around you, really has an effect. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
having that boundary and saying like, oh, I can say no to such and such. I don't have to be the yes girl all the time. It makes such a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that also plays into a lot of the mom guilt that a lot of us deal with, like trying to set a boundary, even around your kid. Like that's, you feel like you're a bad person. You feel like you know, you should be saying yes. You feel like if, like for me, I personally, I really enjoy what I do. I really enjoy work. And, I've had a lot of snide remarks like saying like, oh, you shouldn't be working so much. You should enjoy this time. And I swear that's probably the number one thing I hear as a mom, like, oh, enjoy it. It goes by so fast. And it's like, I get that, but we're doing our very best to make sure that we are happy ourselves. So, if you ultimately know what makes you happy, then you shouldn't feel guilty for that. And I think that's definitely where boundaries come into play. And, I've been in therapy like on and off my whole life, but something my therapist told me that like really stuck with me was that if you feel guilty, then that means you did something wrong. So she's like, if you're sitting there having this guilt about doing what's best for you, you didn't do anything wrong. So there's no reason to sit there and question yourself of like, okay, why do I feel bad about this? Like, did I really, like, did I harm anybody in this process? No, like I just did something that was better for me and my child. And that's something that I've been telling myself now ever since I heard it, like constantly, because the guilt sticks with you. And if you keep like replaying that, it's just going to mess with you even more. So just, that definitely was something I loved
Yeah.
from what she told me. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point too about, you know, kind of almost like ignoring or like the negative thoughts that or negative things that people say about your life and how you choose to live it. Cause it's like, it's a almost like older mentality where you put everyone before yourself and then the mom's like left in the dust or, the mom's kind of left last. And then years later, you're like, oh, I never, gave myself love or kind of did something for myself. But it's like, you're going to do all these things and your daughter's going to see like, oh, wow, like my mom, took care of herself and she was working for us and provided for us. And so I think like, people that say those comments, it's like they don't understand the full grasp or, everyone's lives are just different and people have different
Mm-hmm.
needs for what they want to, I guess, fulfill in their life. But
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that something I realized is that, like, obviously nothing ever against our parents or, because they obviously were doing the best they could. But a lot of what our parents' generation were taught, especially like my mom was a single mom, it's almost like self-neglect. Like you're just constantly neglecting your needs in order to provide for your family, which then obviously leads to depression, anxiety, all of these issues. And it's definitely something I've had to work to overcome